courage to write ICAN or attempt it at all, at least in whatever it is that I am doing, I think I have done well enough to be invited here, to be asked to do this, and I thank you so much for that. And I have said that as from now, henceforth, I'm going to be referred to as a chartered journalist. If anybody has a problem with that, they should show me their own ICAN invitation. And they can argue with their keyboards after that. But to the matter at hand, it's a very serious one. The Sustainable Development Goals 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 are so closely related that if corporates and large organizations felt that they had been excluded from the Sustainable Development Goals, all they had to do was take a look at these goals, which challenge us all to look at cleaner and more efficient sources of energy, even as we seek to provide decent work and economic growth, while factoring in industry, innovation, and infrastructure to grow sustainable cities and communities, which encourages responsible consumption and production, while at the same time reducing inequalities and ensuring that we take action on the climate. What I have tried to do is summarize what all of these things, the SDGs are saying, and how closely related they are, and the goals that have been set before us as we work towards 2030. Any responsible government knows that matters of the environment cannot be handled with kid gloves. The consequences of that we're currently experiencing, the consequences of that are grave. They include the floods that we have seen ravage communities as we speak. A number of states are currently dealing with flood situations. Kogi comes to mind. Anambra comes to mind, Nasarawa comes to mind, Benue comes to mind, Jigawa comes to mind. And in these states, lives and property have been affected. Investments worth millions of dollars have been wiped out, and untold hardship have been caused to those who have been left to deal with the aftermath. If you live here in the FCT, let me see your hand up. And we all know what we've been through in the FCT in the last couple of weeks with fuel scarcity occasioned by the flooding in Kogi, where haulage trucks are unable to pass as a result of what is currently happening there with the flood. So nobody is immune from what is happening. We've also seen the issue of soot take over communities in the Niger Delta and its attendant health effects. Drought causing conflict in northern Nigeria. These are some of the challenges we currently face. So it is commendable that ICAN has chosen to bring these issues to the fore with the theme, Nigeria Adopting Sustainability for Economic Prosperity, and has chosen to ask those who seek our votes come 2023, how will they ensure our collective prosperity in a socially responsible manner? Is this a priority for them? ESG, that's environment, social, and governance, are the new buzzwords for companies. And investors are choosing to put their money where their ideals lie and want a better future for their children. How do any of the gentlemen who seek to lead us hope to incentivize our businesses, large or small, to incorporate it into their business conduct, even as we hope that they incorporate it into the larger Nigerian ethos? How quickly do they think we can evolve, considering that our greatest foreign exchange earner is still a fossil fuel, largely considered environmentally unfriendly? And this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, I want to imagine that the candidates who have chosen to honor this invitation consider matters of the environment a priority. They consider you a priority and have chosen to honor this invitation. Before I introduce them, please, a round of applause to them. We have in our midst this afternoon, I'm going to be introducing them in alphabetical order. I know that usually at events they have protocol, but so that we do not run into any trouble, and also so as to acknowledge the fact that all of the people you see here are candidates seeking your vote. What you have provided for them is a level playing field, a level platform for them to come and talk to you about the issues which you have said are important to you. So I'm going to be introducing them in alphabetical order, and I ask that you very warmly welcome them. We have with us this afternoon the presidential candidate of the Accord Party, Professor Christopher Irene Imunolen. You're welcome. Also here is the presidential candidate of the African Action Congress, Mr. Omoyele Sowore. Sadly, the candidate of the All Progressives Congress was invited, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He was unable to make it, and perhaps he's here. My apologies. So I have just received a contrary information now. I think what I said earlier was the latest I heard. But right now I've just been corrected that perhaps they might still be able to make it. We understand that they're held up at an event. That is what the organizers of your conference have told me, and I have given that information to you. Moving ahead, some quiet please. Moving ahead, we have with us the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, Professor Peter Umeadi. The presidential candidate of the Labour Party is also here, Mr. Peter Obi. We also have with us the vice presidential candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party, Bishop Isaac Idahosa. And last but certainly not the least is the vice presidential candidate and the current governor of Delta State, Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa. Gentlemen, I warmly welcome you once again to this gathering. ICAN has set out a platform for you. They are asking that you address them for 10 minutes, perhaps on the topic that has been set before you and any other topic which is important to you, and then afterwards we have a discussion session. Thank you very much. I'm going to be inviting right away the presidential candidate of the Accord Party. Professor, you have the floor. For 10 minutes, please. No more than 10 minutes. It could be less.
Okay. Yeah, good afternoon, House. Okay, standing on, I know existing protocol. My name quickly is Professor Christopher Emomolen, Presidential Candidate Accord. First and foremost, I want to appreciate ICAN for giving us this platform to speak and be heard. I am perhaps the youngest presidential candidate standing on this platform today. At 39, I represent the voice of the youth. At 39, I'm the only African who have established 3 universities globally. At 39, I'm the only one who probably might be standing here who have demonstrated value and passion for the Nigerian people outside politics. I know this is a sitting of enlightened people, and one of the first things we believe should be done when candidates apply for a job to manage your country is to research, is to know who are those standing here to lead us to the next level of prosperity. As we clap, we must know that Nigeria truly desire and needs fresh air, need new breed of leadership, a leader that has value and passion for his people. I've demonstrated that. In education, for example, I'm probably the only among very few of us who has provided scholarship to over 500,000 Nigeria. You can check it. My name is Professor Christopher. I'm standing here to speak to us so that we can begin to see and have revelation to knowing who will lead us to where we ought to be. We need a man who is not affiliated to the set of those that have currently put us in the problem we are today. The problem of Nigeria is that we live in a country that has no system. A country without system has weak institutions. We must begin to build a system for ourselves. A country that you cannot even say to yourself, you're a citizen. Today, anybody can become a citizen of Nigeria. Even your passport can be picked by anybody in the world. We do not have system that would deliberately interpret our constitution to daily activities. We do not have system because the problem of Nigeria is not a natural disaster. It's man-made problem caused by those who have led us and those who are currently leading us. Recklessness, mismanagement, unaccountability. When a country do not have a system, you don't have institution. And when you don't have that, you have people who are bigger than the country. We need fresh air. We need new breed of leaders. We need those who have demonstrated passion and value in their personal life. You know, Nigerians, we should not be blinded by those who move from one place to another, who seek to you to look like your Messiah. You are learned people. You should research to know those who are standing here. We are applying for a job to become your manager, to manage your country. The future of our children lies in the decision we make. The future of our wives, our mothers, who today are widows, our husbands, who today cannot afford 3 square meals, a country that do not have middle class. I'm not here to motivate you, I'm here to speak to your mind. You know, even if you clap today, you go back to reality of life. Some of you that travel through roads could not sleep while coming, even through here. This problem are caused simply because we need a leader who can enforce, who have the will to build the system and ensure that the institution of Nigeria is strong. That is what I represent. I'm coming into this to ensure that we live a country that we are all proud of. Today we have problems with our education. Check out Professor Chris. I'm the only man who have set up 200 scholarship centers all over Nigeria for the past 15 years with or without politics. These are value. We should not be looking for those that have experience in governance. We should look for those who have experience for the people, not to governance. That is what we have been doing. I'm not going to be talking too much, but the youth, remember what you said last year, that Nigeria truly need a breed of new leaders. And I don't want anyone here to stand to say, oh, you are too young to lead us. Remember those who fought for independence, did so when they were young. Those who transformed this country did so when they were young. We need leaders who are at the climax of their career, not those who are already declining. That is what we represent. The leader that is going to transform Nigeria is one man who is not affiliated, who is not a friend to the set of those that destroyed this country. That is what we are going to bring in. And I pray that by the time we start answering questions, I will be able to further give you points to ensure that you go to the ballots not looking at parties, not looking at those who have led us before, but looking at a credible individual who possesses the passion and value to set Nigeria free. Thank you all.
Can we give him another round of applause? I hope that as you are listening to the presidential candidates, you are making notes and writing questions that you intend to ask them. Because I imagine, well, not that I imagine, I know that this is supposed to be an interactive session. So by all means, note down your questions. I see that you already have a platform through which you're going to be transmitting that. My job here is to moderate it and make sure that as many questions as possible get answered by those whom you have invited to answer the questions. So on that note, I'm going to be inviting, still following my alphabetical order, the presidential candidate of the African Action Congress, Mr. Omoyele Sowore.
Good afternoon, everybody. On my way here, made a promise not to talk about any other candidate but myself. So I want to thank the leadership of ICAN for demonstrating better judgment than the Nigerian Bar Association, who did not invite the rest of us. But having said that, I also want to congratulate those of you who made a bet today that one candidate will not show up. Congratulations, you won. And the candidate that did not show up, please listen to this, is supposed to be an accounting guru from Chicago State University. But he refused to show up at the most important accounting event in Nigeria today. Don't forget that I said I will not talk about other candidates. But the country Nigeria and the future of Nigeria cannot also continue to live or expect unsustainable candidates in 2023. You guys are aware that the president of Nigeria just presented the budget of Nigeria a few days ago. I wasn't an accountant, but I went into that budget and looked at it legally and discovered that it's an illegal budget. Reason being that the budget violated Section 12, subsection 1 of the Nigerian Constitution by way of the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2007, which says explicitly that the deficit to GDP ratio of the national budget must not be more than 3%. We are now at 5%. That is unsustainable. Ladies and gentlemen, I would have loved to stand in front of you and talk about sustainability. It's a very fantastic buzzword for governance. But I'm here mostly to talk about things that are not sustainable anymore in Nigeria. I want to state clearly, while you are happy that I talked about another candidate, but I want to talk about one of you that carried out an unsustainable act of accounting. which is the stealing of over 150 billion naira by the Accountant General of the Federation. That is not sustainable. Oh, are you saying that he's not one of you? Fantastic! 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 All right, I take it back. I take it back. Please, I take it back. And this is why you must ensure, and I will ensure, that the next Accountant General of Nigeria is a member of ICAN. Great accountants, please, let's listen to ourselves. When Maokwe Ogun was asking how many of you live in Abuja, I saw only a few hands. And I was saying to myself, they have driven away the real accountants from Abuja, where they are most needed, so that they can do what they like to do best: cook the books. And this reminded me of a story told by a friend of mine about accountants. They said they went to hell, and a section of hell had all these well-dressed people, and they asked them, who are they? They said, there are three categories of them. Some are doctors, some are lawyers, and accountants. And then an angel was brought to hell to pick out the accountants. And when the accountants were removed from this hellish place and they got to heaven, they asked the manager of heaven, why did you bring us out here? He said, well, you guys are accountants. You are the one who prepared everybody that came to heaven. So you might as well be in heaven as well. I want to say clearly that the sustainability of Nigeria depends on a number of things. But number one of it is electing a sound leader in 2023. Please, before you clap for me, I have covered a lot of leaders who, instead of serving this country, were serving themselves. I covered a Sikh president about 2008 to 2010, and we know what it cost us. I covered stories about the current man who spent a not sustainable long period of time in London treating himself. Now I hope and pray that we are not going to elect a bunch of sick leaders because our country is sick, and a sick country needs healthy leaders. I have said, next, guys, is that when you're talking about sustainability of this country, we must fix our energy sector. There is no country in the world that is going to experience an industrial revolution without energy, without power. And I have said, and I will repeat here, that Nigeria have no business with any individual or political party that was responsible for darkness in Nigeria. I have said, and I'll repeat here, that there's no country that can experience sustainability at the rate of corruption in Nigeria. People play down corruption because of the way the fight against corruption is dramatized in our country. But let me say clearly to you, corruption has destroyed our capability to exist as a people, and we must not take it for granted. And I will tell you that I'm going to need a lot of accountants. It's not if, when I become the president of Nigeria, to calculate how much has been stolen from this country since 1960 and give us figures on how to recover them. And I am not going to be one of the presidents who will say to you, bygone is bygone. No, our past has eaten into our future. We must recover the past so that we can live a sustainable future. That is why we're going to need you. And I have also said that Nigeria's glory, future, progress is not dependent on numbers alone. It will depend on the credibility of people managing the country. This is where you come in, the accountants. We don't want a situation where money has been stolen before we deploy software. We want a country where accountants use software to prevent corruption before they happen. Because we know that as it is today, we are spending too much money chasing after money that has been stolen. We do not need that if we deploy digitalization of every facet of our lives. It is also the reason why we must sustain a process of digitalization and retrieve Nigeria from analog leaders who think by way of typewriters, whereas we should be thinking in digitalization era. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to assure you that as a presidential candidate and a chartered revolutionary, you will have, as the president of Nigeria, someone who has the courage, who's got the credibility, the integrity, and the ability to run a modern state. There is no reason why Nigeria or Nigerians should have leaders running its affairs that do not know how to run their own personal affairs. Thank you very much, and I wish you the best going ahead in your conference. Thank you, and have a beautiful day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Omoyele Sowore, the presidential candidate of the African Action Congress, talking about issues and matters that he says are no longer sustainable. Let's move on quickly now. I'm going to be inviting the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, Professor Peter Umeadi. Please, can we settle down, please? Some decorum in the house, please. Just a moment. I'm going to ask us once again to please settle down. I noticed that we were a little distracted just when I introduced the presidential candidate of APGA. So I'm going to introduce him again so that you can welcome him properly to the podium. Professor Peter Umeadi is the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Grand Alliance. Thank you very much. Prof, you have the floor now.
Yes. Thank you very much. I'm impressed to be here, and I know how an occasion like this feels. I will race through my presentation, and I hope you find it entertaining, and I hope that gives you a mirror into this humble man who, after serving in the judiciary, thinks he can make a difference in the executive. Thank you very much. Sustainability, used interchangeably with sustainable development, refer to the encouragement to search for that development which meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. The pillars of sustainability are human, environmental, social, and economic. There is insecurity in Nigeria of 2022. It is a paradox that this is the same Nigeria which led peacekeeping operations worldwide. By whatever name you call it, unknown gunmen, insurgents, militants, terrorists, or kidnappers. People are afraid to move about by day or night, in long-distance travel or around their neighborhood. When we hear of solutions to use agriculture to achieve food security, it falls flat on its face. It presents a conundrum. The villagers have fled the farms for fear of their lives. We should prioritize human security. No firepower should be higher than that of the state. It is the prerogative of the state to overwhelm any other groups, take control of its sphere of influence, and enthrone and enforce the rule of law. In this regard, I support the bringing about of state police in Nigeria. Environmental sustainability is fundamental and critical to the survival and sustenance of other forms of sustainability. The aspects which come to mind here is land degradation as a result of exploitation of natural resources. On a trip to Port Harcourt to visit my sister and her family, I set out to visit the place of my nativity, which is Abonima. I joined a speedboat, which was a mere canoe fitted with an engine. The boat was traveling at excessive speed that I had my heart in my mouth all through the journey. I saw firsthand that the water and the banks were saturated with oil. One could see the sheen. I saw the hundreds of holes on the banks, which I later learned were crab holes and such like creatures that survived there. We know that oil was first drilled in Ogoni in 1958. However, it took nearly 6 decades in 2017 for the Nigerian government and oil producers to begin to clean up the spills, which you can bet started in 1958. The Hydrocarbon Pollution and Remediation Project was formed for that purpose. Shell Petroleum beat its chest that he donated an initial sum of $10 million. It has been recorded that oil worth $100 billion had been taken from that place. From a combination of effects of oil spill, acid rain, resulting from gas flaring, the environment had been degraded continually with attendant destruction of the traditional local economic support system of fishing and farming and crop yields and harvests. Let us compare with what happened in other places where environmental sustainability is taken seriously. In April 2010, the British Petroleum offshore oil drilling in Louisiana, United States of America, spilled oil which coated more than 1,000 miles of coastline in 6 states and covered over 46,000 square miles of the Gulf of Mexico. Within months, the United States government of Barack Obama forced BP to pay $15 billion in cleanup costs. BP, in fact, paid a total of $60 billion, including $20 billion in economic damages to companies and individuals harmed by the spill. See David M. Ullman of University of Michigan, 23rd of April 2022. BP removed most of the oil from the Gulf Coast beaches. Over the next several years, the visible sheen of the slick eventually disappeared. That is the ideal in environmental sustainability, which we should copy. Same should go for the excavations for solid minerals going on across the country, which are generally uncontrolled, yielding erosion sites and other forms of degradation. We should have a more cumulative impact assessment. We should have community-based assessments completed with community's perspective. We should increase cross-boundary policy making and transnational governance, which will enable us to involve and hold entities responsible even from far places. In social sustainability, we should review our education system. I recommend the German model, where all start and proceed to the middle level, then separate for those who want to continue in the white-collar jobs and those who have tendencies to technical trainings. The structures for technical education will be defined, leading to skills acquisition and self-employment. We will aim to build skills acquisition center playgrounds across the country in the fashion that party offices were built in the past. I am committed to implementing the Child Rights Act. About 11 states are yet to domesticate the Child Rights Act, and these 11 states are all in the north. I will hold parents of children roaming the streets accountable. I envisage free internet for students. Wireless fidelity internet shall apply to secondary and primary school students. The policy will later extend to homes. The app will supply an autonomous repository of millions of free Wi-Fi hotspots all over the country, which will bring out the desired effects. I will want to achieve and revive the post office. On economic sustainability, we will focus on economy stimulation, job creation, manufacturing, local production, education, and health. Steps will be taken to maximize government revenue, optimize expenditure, and enshrine the regime of prudence with our emphasis on value. We will pay attention to the informal economy. Here, Nigeria has comparative advantage over other countries in Africa, with over 53% of our labor force so engaged and yielding 65% of the gross domestic product. There is a line which I found, and I want to repeat it before my time runs out. It is a line in the United States Postal Service's motto, which says, "Neither rain, nor hail, nor sleet, nor snow, nor heat of day, nor dark of night shall keep this carrier from the sweet completion of his appointed round." Such is the work and patriotic ethics which should be imbibed and which I'm thinking about for Nigeria. In all, an ABGA presidency will want to fulfill what the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, defined as follows: sustainable development is the pathway for the future we want for all. It offers a framework to generate economic growth, achieve social justice, and exercise environmental stewardship and strengthen governance. Efforts should be made for these skills to be imparted to our youths in the informal sector so that they can move into secure and less precarious forms of employment, with the German model, which I mentioned earlier, will give up. The pivotal issue is electricity and should be taken care for the benefit of larger society and implementation of all facets of our economy. So here you go. You have a sincere man, a man who has removed himself from the picture, and a man who is ready to lead a party that is resonating around the country, which is the All Progressive Grand Alliance, to victory in 2023. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Peter Umeadi, for delivering such a scholarly paper. I'm sure for those who would want to take a further look at what he has, he is able to provide a soft copy of that for members of ICAN. In the meantime, I am going to ask all of us to please calm down. Is it possible for us to have a moment of absolute silence? Please, I know you've had a very long day and you've been here since morning and there's been barely a break. But please, I'm going to ask for some decorum. You have invited this gentleman here to address you, and I don't think it is nice that whilst they're speaking, you're also having a conversation of your own. That's not very kind. So please let us have a decorous house as they give us what they have for us. That's the only way we'll be able to truly and fully interrogate what it is that they have brought on board. If I have your cooperation, can I hear an aye? Thank you very much. Thank you. So let's move on now. I'm going to be introducing the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Gregory Obi.
Hello, this is timed. Let me Your Excellencies, let me respectfully stand on all due and existing protocols. I thank the organizers of this event for the honor of inviting us to participate and for the topic, the issue of sustainability for economic prosperity. I only knew this morning that we're going to comment on it, as I told the organizers, but I think it's a worthwhile topic for us to comment on. Economics, when you talk about SDG, which is where you drive this from when she was reading, it is aftermath of Millennium Development Goals, which lasted from year 2000 to year 2015. And this is lasting from 2015 to 2030. And I agree with what Prof said, that we are about hiring the new CEO for the company called Nigeria. So we have to look at the people's past and what they've been able to do. MDG goal, which ended in 2015, for your records, I started implementing it in year 2008 in Anambra State. And by the time it ended in 2015, I was #1 in Nigeria. And as we move on, what we are going to do, because it's critical, as we move on in what we are going to do, for me, the Labour Manifesto is already mainstreamed along the SDGs. You can go and look at the manifesto, it's already mainstreamed, and we put it into our development agenda and what we want to do, following our experience with MDG. Then it comes to where, for you accountants, your contribution to that development. Nobody can think about whatever we're going to do, whether you call it SDG or anything, without knowing that accountants, chartered accountants, play a critical role in development. Because whatever you plan, whatever you want to do, you have to ensure, one, the financial sustainability of it. You have to come into the budgeting, the forecasting, and most importantly, the revenue. Because at the heart of tax is you. You have to bring the taxation into it. Today, with the most critical problem of Nigeria, apart from other things that are besetting it, insecurity, everything is revenue to GDP, which is often shouted about that we don't have enough revenue. We don't have enough revenue because to GDP, even among the African pairs, we are 6%, when the average in Africa is 16%. Going globally is even worse. The reason is, so at the heart of it is you. It is you that is supposed to help the government to organize when the government starts doing the right things. How are we going to do it to ensure that this tax revenue comes in order to be able to build these sustainable goals? At the heart of it is You must secure and unite Nigeria. Today, Nigeria is among the fragile states, so security becomes paramount and critical. You must govern by rule of law and ensure that we fight what one of the candidates have mentioned, issue of corruption. At the heart of everything happening here in this country today is corruption. You have corruption of all sorts, corruption in terms of the way you appoint people to be in office, by appointing incompetent people, corruption, the way we do our expenditure, corruption in terms of if you look at our subsidy today, it's virtually an organized crime. Today, our oil is being stolen by who? By people in government. And you can go on, and the heart of it is this. So you must remove a country and show that we must now have a country where there will be wealth with enterprise. In any country where government officials are richer or politicians are richer than business people, that country is finished. And that's what you're getting here. So you have nothing to account for. So for me, if you're going to talk about sustainability for economic development, is to start doing the right thing. What are we going to do? I've said my number one priority is to secure and unite Nigeria. People will tell you security is so difficult. It's not difficult. It's only in Nigeria that somebody kidnaps me and is phoning my brother, negotiating price. If I'm sick, he calls police, he calls doctor, they come and treat me. Everybody knows where we are, but except police. It's not acceptable. With technology today, with technology and everything today, you know where the crime is taking place. And you can sort it out. We have to have the three-level policing, local government, state, and national. In terms of corruption, it is easy to fight. People make it look as if it's difficult. It is not. The box stops on your desk. If you yourself is not stealing, those around you are not. You reduce it by 70%. Two of my accountant generals are your member. You can go and ask them how much was missing in Anambra State. And it's very simple. This is what we want to translate. We want to be able to move the country from consumption to production. And when you come to moving from consumption to production, whenever I say move it from consumption to production, the first thing people ask is, what are you going to do? The greatest assets of Nigeria today is the vast uncultivated land in the north. If you put that land into production, it will make a difference. Yesterday, we had a professor who was delivering a lecture in Lagos, Professor Stephen of this thing, and he talked about Bangladesh and Vietnam, which was a basket case yesterday. And I told him how I've won all the fields of Bangladesh. Nigeria today, a country, when he finished that lecture, I joined somebody who was from Yobe State. And he said, in Yobe State, they cannot do. I said, Yobe State is 45,000 square kilometers of land. Yobe State is bigger than Netherlands. If you add Borno State, you have 115,000 square kilometers. That can go for half, a quarter of the entire land in Europe. Thereby, you have to be productive. If Netherlands can export 120 billion worth of agricultural goods every year, at 33,000 square kilometers of land, Yobe State should do 1.5 times that. 1.5. And 1.5 is just about $2 billion. We're not asking for too much. 1.5% of that is $2 billion. And if you do $2 billion, at rate of exchange today is 1.3 trillion. Thereby, you shouldn't be going to here to take the share of your distance. So we want to move the country, make it productive, stop corruption. These are things you can use to stabilize your currency, which is collapsing today because you're not productive. You're not exporting anything. You're not selling anything. This is how you can pull people out of poverty. The more you pull people out of poverty, the more you reduce criminality and be able to make the country, sustainable. You cannot talk about sustainability in a situation where gangsters have taken over your country. You can't talk about sustainability when you have 33% unemployment. You can't talk about sustainability when you have 20 million out of school children. No, these are things you have to tackle first. As you're doing it and you mainstream the sustainability aspect of SDG into your mainstream, you will be able to drive the process. But in conclusion, as the professor said, he said, borrowing Linkwayon, you don't need too much of sophistication or written documents. All you need to do is to continue to do simple things consistently. And you get there. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Peter Gregory Obi, presidential candidate of the Labour Party. I'm going to be inviting right away, without much ado. Let's not forget, we have a pact that will be decorous and that we will not murmur. So please, let us maintain the same, shall I say, atmosphere which we just maintained a moment ago. So, ladies and gentlemen, kindly help me welcome the vice presidential candidate of the new Nigeria People's Party, Bishop Isaac Idahosa.
Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of my principal, His Excellency Senator Dr. Rabi Musa Kwankwaso, I stand on his steed to deliver his thoughts. Excellencies present and all protocols duly observed. Please, you have to give me some time and possibly learn one or two things from what I'm about to deliver to you. The Registrar, Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. Warm greetings from my principal, the presidential candidate of the new Nigeria People's Party, NNPP, distinguished Senator Rabi Musa Kwankwaso.
A moment, Bishop. I'm going to interrupt you. We're going to make it up again to you with the time. I just want to be sure that we still have the pact. If we do, can I hear an aye? Thank you very much. Please, let's keep to it. Bishop, please, you may proceed.
Regrettably, he is unable to be here in person today due to the unavailable clash of schedule. However, he believes that the future opportunity will arise by the grace of God, where he will be in your midst to deliberate and provide solutions to the demanding issues on Nigerian economic advancement. First, I'd like to express immense gratitude for this invitation as a guest speaker at this conference. In the same manner, commend the good work of the organizers of the event, both at the state and national levels, particularly the Registrar and Governing Council of this distinguished organization with high accolades in Nigeria and worldwide alike. Coming together is impressive, but staying together is a superior cause to greatness. Hence, I congratulate each and every one of the 56,000 members of ICAN on this giant achievement of celebrating 52 productive years together. You have proven that the vision of the founders has been an extraordinary cause. You have done very well for yourselves, your profession, and Nigeria. At NNPP, we believe that Nigeria is at a critical crossroad at this time of our journey together as a nation. Therefore, It is apparent that all hands must be on deck, and the time is now. Particular area of interest are Nigerians' wealth management, asset recovery and monitoring systems, debt repayment, financial commitments, forensic records solution, as well as transparent accounting system, to mention but a few. As we will demonstrate in details at the unveiling of our presidential campaign blueprint, our mandate is solution-based, people-driven, and business-friendly. My experiences across the board as a legislator, as the Chief Executive Officer of the State of Kano, in my capacity as a governor, as well as a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria Defense, have prepared me to understand the magnitude of Nigerians' economic distress. Therefore, the leader we desire at this time is the one who is ready to roll up his sleeves on day one. A leader who can delegate and manage a performing team with limited resources at our disposal. Also, equally important is the security situation across the nation. This menace has taken so much out of our lives and our commonwealth, yet it has continued to be an undesirable burden to us all, both at home and in the diaspora, in one way or the other. Consequently, in order to be able to achieve our sustainable goals and succession plans, we must recover first and build our gross domestic products as well as our foreign reserves with a deliberate and strategic approach with clear intent. Yes, we can do it when we put the right people in the right places at the right time. Today, it is a fact too plain to be contested that the economy of Nigeria is in a state of uncertainty. The issue of high inflation rate, fluctuation in foreign exchange markets to the extent that for the very first time in the history of Nigeria, the United States dollar is exchanging almost for 800 naira. A constant fall in oil price and revenue generation in insecurity are great concerns that require strong economic reforms. Economic development is the desire of all nations of the world, but how to attain a sustainable economic development and by extension economic recovery remains a challenge to many nations. Different paradigms of development are being considered globally, and one of such paradigms is sustainable development. Harmony between man and nature is the prerequisite for sustainable development. There is now a transition to an agenda which embraces the three dimensions to a sustainable development, while still ensuring that poverty eradication at its highest priority and that extreme poverty is ended within a generation. Until Nigeria begins to take this path, sustainable economic development will be a mirage. The approach of this paper presentation will seek sustainable approach to economic recovery in Nigeria. This paper will also seek to focus on economic recovery and sustainability and to discover how to construct a dynamic equilibrium economy. It will discuss the best practices that can enable organizations to significantly contribute to the social and environmental sustainability and highlights the challenges and approaches for sustainable economic recovery. This paper also discusses essential to sustainable economic development, drawing on economic development best practices as well as environmental best practices to create an integration of sustainability and economic development. This paper will propose workable solutions, recommendations on how to facilitate pragmatic, environmentally and socially sustainable economic development strategies to create an adaptive sustainable economic recovery in Nigeria. Harmony between man and nature is a prerequisite for sustainable development, depicting that the development of humanity should not be on the cost of environmental health. The path of development adopted should be such that is always within such limits that nature allows, beyond which a threat to survive is inevitable. Until Nigeria begins to take this path, sustainable economic recovery leading to development will be a mirror. Now, my introduction. And I'll be rounding up at the same time. Economic development is considered by the Nigerian government as well as government all over the world to be its central task, and this has led to vested interest and unparalleled enthusiasm for growing the Nigerian economy. The pattern of development pursued so far has created a series of social and environmental problems. Severe damage is done to the Nigerian environment as well as natural resources as a result of the efforts to transform the natural environment to achieve rapid economic development. Environmental quality in Nigeria has continued to decline. Resource depletion and environmental pollution have become serious problems requiring a rethinking of governmental policies. Different paradigms of development are being given consideration globally, and one of such is the change of paradigm to sustaining development. Sustainable development is the process, judicious use and conservation of natural resources for the overall improvement in the quality of life for the present and future generation on long-term basis. 2, the importance of the environment to man and every other living creature cannot be overemphasized. The environment is an essential part of man's existence, and human beings are at the center of concern for environmental sustainability. Nigeria is an oil and gas producing nation. This exploration and exploitation in the Nigerian oil and gas sector impact negatively on the environment. The Nigerian environment is in danger, having been degraded by human activities.
Bishop,
economic activities are not carried out in an
Bishop,
environmental...
I am so sorry that, I have to interrupt you. I know that you have a well-detailed paper.
Thank you. What we'll do is that we'll be unveiling our manifestos, and we're more than happy to give an ear to it so we can have all this. We have not come here to play, we have come for serious business, and that's what we do. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Bishop. Thank you. Very quickly and without much ado, I'm going to be inviting our last speaker, certainly again not the least, the Vice Presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party and Governor of Delta State, Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa.
Thank you so much. The President of ICAN and delegates to this conference, I'm glad I'm in your midst today. But just to put on records that we only got this invitation on Monday, which is just 2 days ago, and I've had to come and represent the presidential candidate. But there are real issues in this country. I want to stay away from politics, but talk about the real issues. The Nigeria that we have today is a Nigeria that is troubled. There's disunity, and from different parts of this nation, we are speaking with voices of anger. So first is to find a pathway to reunite us as a people. Because if we do not work collectively as a people, and we pull in different directions, we will not be making progress. So our first major program is to ensure that we sit down with stakeholders in this country, and then we get to sit to talk about Nigeria and how best to stay together. But in staying together, there must be equity, fairness, both in terms of participation in government and in terms of development and provision of amenities across this nation. No section should be neglected at any point in time. When we work with social equity and ensure that everybody is included in governance and in the dividends of democracy, we will be able to have a better country for ourselves. Secondly is the issue of insecurity. A lot of us talk about it, but there are very many issues when you're talking about insecurity as of today. You blaming the police, we blame the military. But what are the numbers? What numbers should we truly have? We must be very cautious before we throw blames. These persons that are working for us in the police force, even in the military, how trained are they? How regularly are we retraining them? How are we providing for their welfare? How are we providing equipment for them? We talked about technology. Technology is very important. So we must be cautious. So we definitely, as a government, we have to increase the number of people who are in the Nigerian police force and in the military. We have to equip them and ensure that their welfare is taken care of and ensure that they are regularly trained. It's very important. But very importantly, this country cannot survive where we are at the moment without a state police force. And as a political party, my candidate wants you to know that the legislation has already been put in place to amend the Constitution and to have a law to govern the creation of state police right from the first week of its ascension of power. I have seen the legislation, I have read it. We have had a lot of people working on this in the past 1 year, and that legislation is ready. Because without the state police at the moment, it is difficult to secure Nigeria. Because what we're finding now is that states are beginning to have all manner of bodies created. They are Motekwa and the rest. That's not the pathway to go. States must have their police, and it's important. Talking about the economy, it's very bad. The economy of Nigeria is in a very bad state. And we must understand that as of today, as we talk, the budget of this nation in the last 4 or 5 years, every money spent on capital expenditure has been borrowed. And we have continued to borrow ourselves, and is the money being put in the right direction? There is a problem. Obviously, we do not think that it's put in the right direction, so we must begin to rework and reform the economy in such a way that it works. But the economy must be private sector led. Anybody expecting that the government itself is going to throw so much money into the economy and that is the pathway, it's not right. The economy must be private sector driven, but the government must provide the enabling environment to enable the private sector to work. And 50% of our GDP is by the MSMEs. And we must find ways for providing them finances and giving them the needed infrastructure and the pathway to work. As we talk as of today, Nigeria's oil only accounts for about 9% of GDP. And Nigeria's oil is what actually accounts for the inflow of foreign resource to this country. So we must find a mix and how to develop not just the oil sector, but we must ensure that the oil that we produce we refine for ourselves. As long as we continue to import oil from outside and we do not quickly ensure that there is refining in this country and we continue to pay subsidy, we'll definitely not be going on the right path. So we must quickly encourage those and the private sector to ensure that oil refining is done within our country and that we begin to export. We must continue to ensure that there is gas development and that in the gas development we develop through down to the downstream sector, because there's a lot of money to get from there, and that is the pathway that the world is going in at the moment. So these are issues. So we must talk about the specifics and then provide the enabling environment. What is stopping our companies, our enterprises or industries from working? To get finances, but it's not easy. At very high interest rate, we do not have power. But when we begin to ensure that the private sector has the needed environment that will enable them to work, the private sector will be able to develop our infrastructure, they'll be able to get people in, they'll be able to develop the power sector, because we must liberalize. We cannot ensure that government continues to be the Father Christmas, leading everything when we do not have the resources to do so. So when we provide energy and ensure that the financial parts, where you also become important, that those paths are followed, we'll be able to develop the economy, because that is very important and key for us. We have decided that Nigeria has to be restructured. With the federal government too big, it's a military creation. We need to devolve more powers and more resources to the states and to the local governments, because that is the growth pole for development for our nation. These are things that we must look into. They've been worked out, the legislation has been put in place, and we're just waiting that as soon as we get in, we're going to take this to the National Assembly, have a discourse with them, have a discourse with Nigerians, and then find a pathway together. We must work together to be able to move forward. Education is in very bad state. The health sector is in very bad state, and we have strong points on that. Science education and technological education is very important. Entrepreneurial education is very important. We're ignoring it right from our secondary school level, even from the primary school, through to the universities. Entrepreneurial education must be emphasized. That is what we are doing in Delta State, and people know. And we must begin to find ways to create jobs and to make people learn that they can create jobs and work for themselves. They cannot continue to depend on government. These things are very important. Go to Delta State. We have grown a lot of entrepreneurs, and I can see hope going into the future. You start small, but the MSMEs is the pathway to go. We must develop them, we must fund them, we must ensure that we encourage people to go in that path. Coming into the health sector, the Health Act 2014, I led them in the National Assembly to ensure that we provided for the vulnerable. As long as you don't provide for the vulnerable, it is a big problem in this nation. The kind of health structures that we're having is creating problems for us. You must ensure that primary health care is the basic one, and that foundation must be strengthened. And that's why we decided that we must strengthen primary health care and that we must provide for health insurance. And particularly in so doing, you must be ready at the beginning to pay the premium for the less privileged, which would be those pregnant women who don't have their own private resource, and those children under 5 years of age. We are doing that in Delta State, and it is working for us. And I believe that we can do it for Nigeria, because it is something that is workable. These things and so many other things are there. Yes, the private sector must lead the economy. We cannot continue to rely on a consumption economy. It's not about importation. We can do it in this country, but we must create the enabling environment to get things to work. And we are talking about realities on ground and what is doable. And the PDP is ready to do that. And we have already a pathway. We have a covenant with Nigerians, a document. We are not just talking to issues. We are very convinced in ourselves that we need to do it together. And this country, there are so many issues that we have to look into. Even the issue of population management, we tend to ignore it, but it's a major issue in Nigeria. When your economic growth is far outstripped by your fertility rate, you cannot develop. In planning, we must be cautious where exactly we are going. It's important that we look at these issues. And these are issues that Atiku Abubakar and I and the rest of us have discussed. We are discussing with the private sector. We engage you, we engage all Nigerians, and together we'll get things working again. God bless you.
The Vice Presidential Candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa, giving his own speech there. We're going to be moving very swiftly now. I see that your questions are pouring in. I mean, you guys are not joking, no. And the only criteria, the only, the only standard it has to meet is that it is not attacking personalities. As long as your question is issue-based and we have time, I'll do my best to make sure that we pose it. May I also just request of the candidates that an answer to a question should not be longer than 2 minutes so that we can go around. There are 6 of you here, and I imagine that if we're going to be able to cover ground, we should not go longer than 2 minutes. So let me quickly take this question from Ajayi Samuel Olubumi, who is asking the presidential candidate of the Accord Party, who has talked about his scholarship plans, etc., and what he has. It says, what practical governance experience are you bringing on board based on the complexity and demand for the job of a president?
Okay, thank you. Like I would always say, thank you for the question. I had mentioned it clearly that the next president of Nigeria must be one that has passion and value for his people. If we check all over the world, check leaders who have transformed their nation, these are the two values they possess. We must be able to look at this, and I have done that privately. I'm the only one seated here who privately can speak to what I have done in Nigeria as to one person who has not been in government. So that is what we are bringing. Then, a matter of experience, I've been, at my age, I've been so progressive when it comes to building business all over the world. Like I said, we are enlightened people. It's important that we begin to research to know the candidate that is applying for this job, not through sentiment, but knowing what they possess and what they've done. I've not stand here to tell you what I would do. I'm telling you what I have done, and these are criteria to be used to adjudge how a leader will perform if eventually get there. I have also been a social entrepreneur. Social entrepreneur, my gain is towards the welfare of the people. I have served the people as a social entrepreneur. We are talking about the challenge of sustainable development. I have served as the West African Secretary General to West African Renewable Energy Board.
I'm going to have to interrupt you just to quickly, add one additional question. It's closely related. I'm trying to see if I can find it here, but essentially, the person, is raising questions about how true it is that you have, been given scholarships for the past 15 years if you're 39 years old. The person wants to know, are you saying that you started at the age of 24?
Okay. It's there. You can go check. It's all there online. I am the founder of one of the biggest NGO in Nigeria called Unique Foundation. I'm also the president of Global Wealth University. I'm the president of Pan American College in California. I own various educational platforms. And because, I must say, of my background, I lost my father at the age of 12, and it was very difficult for me to go to school. Ever since then, I have run a passion to ensuring that Nigerians and Africa, I have a university in Togo that gives Togolese scholarship, a country I can never become a president. It demonstrates passion. You can go check it. Our school that has scholarship all over Nigeria have more than 120,000 students now, all on scholarship. And we've been doing this for many years. So it might look impossible, but it's possible for me because it's a thing of passion. And I know there are so many Nigerians out there. Who is also pursuing their passion to service the Nigerian system. I represent one of those Nigerians. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be posing a question to the vice presidential candidate of the NNPP. I understand that he has to leave us shortly because he has to travel. We're going to wish you journey mercies, but just before you go, is it possible for you to quickly take this question from... Can we have some quiet in the house, please? Thank you. From Amadi Nathan Chukwuwike, who's asking, considering the situation in Nigeria with respect to corruption and mismanagement of our resources, how do you plan to handle these and the cabal that are holding government officials to ransom and depriving the country of necessary growth?
We need a leadership that is courageous, strong political will, leadership that is determined, that has the passion, is passionate about Nigeria and the Nigerian citizens. We need a leadership void of confusion, void of compromise, a leadership that will be centered on the people. Now, corruption is a thing of the mind. When you have full education on who you are, what you must be doing for your own country, and void of greed. You are selfless. You have prioritized Nigeria for development. Curb leakages, void capital theft, where monies are siphoned abroad, increase productivity and production that have been impaired, leading to waste of time, resources, and energy. Nigeria is a beautiful place where when all of us love it as it were, and sit down and take our leadership or our leaders accountable for every bit of thing we are saying today.
Sorry, Bishop, sorry to interrupt you, I'm sure that we'll have to redo the counting. I'm interrupting you so that I can repose the question. Do you acknowledge that there is a presence of a cabal in this country which is holding it captive?
That's what I say, self-will, courage to do the right thing. When you get into a place of power and you have no preference but competence, character is going to be the order of the day. Enjoy the rule of law. It doesn't matter whose ass is God. Once one is corrupt, it's made to face. So the law shouldn't be two-sided. It should be what is meant for one should be meant for the other one. So the cabals have as much power as is given to them. But when you choose to say, no, I am for the people and the masses, then they will follow suit over time.
Thank you very much for your response there. The next one, I'm looking at this one. Well, it looks like questions are just coming in and covering the ones I had seen earlier. I'm going to take this one from Adekola Maria Oluwafunke, who has a question for the presidential candidate of the Labour Party. She says, governance is not a one-man affair. How are you going to ensure that you put machinery in place to deliver on these promises? And how do you plan to... And how do you plan to sustain the economy? I'm trying to find the question, but that's basically what... Anyway, let's just start from the fact that governance is not a one-man affair.
Of course, that is right. You start by building a team. It's about being able to have a team that is competent, that has capacity to do the right thing. It's not one man affair, and I agree entirely with that. And I can say that I have shown in private sector where I've built and led a team at least that capitalized the smallest bank into 25 billion bank in my 40s. And I've built a government that at least has shown by the time we left office, you could see the result of that government in areas of HDI, education, health, and everything, where we move from where we are to number one, and being able to sustain. If we talk about the issue of corruption now, I can say I have been governor in Anambra State. I'm responsible for all the finances. Go there and show me where their money is missing.
I found the second part of the question now. About when she talked about machinery, I also imagine that she might be talking about the National Assembly. That's one. And then she also asked, how do you plan to sustain our economy in view of all the debts already incurred?
I governed Anambra State without having one member of House of Assembly from my party. Once you're doing the right thing, everybody knows that in his constituency there's a problem. We're talking about Nigeria. You can do it without having members from your party. If you're doing the right thing, you can put it on the table. You're talking about issue of debt. There's nothing wrong in borrowing. I've said it consistently. What is wrong is when you borrow for consumption. Every country of the world borrows money. America today, which is the biggest economy, owes almost 100% to its GDP. The same thing for the second biggest economy, China. Third biggest economy, Japan. Everybody's owing. But what you use the money you borrowed for to do is what makes the difference. If I have time, I can show you two countries that borrowed at the same time with Nigeria. Today, they've changed their economy, their per capita have increased. Nigeria went south because what we borrowed, we don't know where it is. It's not properly invested.
Okay, let me put this to Mr. Shore of the African Action Congress. This is from Ajayi Christopher Oluwadamilare. Even though it's not addressed in particular to you, he says, what is the sustainable plan for education in Nigeria? Education is meant to sustain Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Let me make a quick clarification. I heard from some of our colleagues here that the unity of Nigeria is very sacrosanct. I disagree with it because it's not part of the SDGs that Nigeria must be united, except we sustain Nigeria on the basis of justice. Nigeria can never be united, and it can never continue to be united. Having said that, I want to mention that I am a beneficiary of free education, and it will be a crime in this country to continue to insist from those who benefited from free education that the younger ones who are poorer than when they existed should pay through their noses to acquire education. The solution to sustainable education is 3. Investment, 2, investment, and 3, investment. Invest in education. Give our people great access to education. Give them quality education. And to those who have been in government and those who are still in government, stop this universal basic education. We don't need basic education to advance because the rest of the world is no longer using slates and chalk to train their children. They are using computers. Let's invest in those kind of quality education so that our children can compete with the rest of the children or people around the world in the nearest future. There is no basis for a country that cannot pay 1.3 trillion naira to ASU to buy vehicles for the Republic of Niger, SUVs. We have gotten our priorities wrong, and until we get it right, we can never do anything right, and that is why you should change your mind and vote for those of us who have experienced greatness and who want to bring it to Nigeria. Thank you.
Let me just quickly add this question to it because it is closely related. It's from ICAN-ngr Felix Mayowa. It says, can any of the candidates make an open pledge for adequate funding of education, and to what percentage if elected? So,
I make a pledge to spend at least 26% of Nigeria's budget in the direction of education. And I mean it because, as I said, I benefited from free education in Ondo State. Anybody from Ondo State here? Yes, most of us benefited from free education. And we will be committing a crime against humanity if we don't make this pledge and ensure that it's implemented in our lifetime.
Well, any of the other presidential candidates, when it's your turn to speak, can also make a pledge on education. But this one is from, I'm trying my best not to mispronounce this name, Eboruan Odiano St. Precious, and it's for Dr. Okowa. He says, what specific initiatives or incentives will your administration bring that will create the environment for the private sector to work? What do you think are the current policies affecting private sector contribution to the economy? And what do you think about the borrowing to finance budget and the huge size of our recurrent expenditure? What is your plan to cut costs?
Yes, thank you so much. Concerning the borrowings, I want to get from that place. It's good to borrow, but you must borrow for the right reasons. But if we are borrowing as we are borrowing today, and you're borrowing to subsidize fuel, and we are spending trillions of naira on fuel subsidy, when you cannot grow the infrastructure, that will enable the private sector to develop itself, and then you're crowding out the finances of the private sector because the borrowings are both external and internal. Internally, with the huge borrowing in this country, we are truly crowding out the private sector because the banks will prefer to borrow to the government than lend to the private sector, and that is not good enough. And when we do not encourage the private sector to get into all sectors of the economy, we are closing on the power sector, and the government is not able to ensure that that whole part is such that we're able to provide enough energy. It's not good for us. But if the government liberalizes the power sector in such a place that from generation to transmission to distribution, and there are no bottlenecks, we'll truly find that the private sector will be in a position within a short while to truly provide the energy that we require for industries to be able to grow in this nation. That is not the pathway at the moment, and that is the pathway we intend to go. And it is very important. And then the other creative environments for the private sector, we need to begin to create infrastructure development from, because without infrastructure, it's a big problem. We need to have special economic zones where people can truly have shared facilities to be able to develop their industries. The high cost of energy and high cost of financing is not good for the industry, it's not good for the MSMEs, and it's really choking the private sector from developing. And only the private sector can truly engage our people and ensure that they're employed at the moment. But that is not what is going on. So everybody is now looking for a government job, and the government jobs are limited because that is why it's continuing to crowd to create a very high recurrent expenditure on the part of governance, because there is no other source of generation of employment, and it is not good for our nation.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa. Let me quickly take this question from Ganiyu Bukola Jalil. He's asking a number of, he or she, I'm not very certain now, is asking a number of questions. I'm going to pose a number of them to you, Professor Omeadi. He or she says, can each of the presidential aspirants tell us with a timeline what will be done differently to, one, adopt, achieve, and sustain improved, sustainable economic prosperity for Nigeria beyond your tenure? Let's start from there.
Thank you very much. One thing we must hold on to is that I will recount the great writer in Vanguard, Dele Shobowale, saying that my governor, Professor Saludo, will be the first economist to be the governor of a state. You don't have to be an economist, as we're getting on here, to do things right. Barack Obama was a lawyer. Biden is a lawyer. So, you see, what happens, and I keep saying it in governance, is that it's the mindset of the man who has been entrusted with power that you check. If the man has that is what we often refer to as a political will. And that is the bottom line. In other words, if you get into power and if I become president of Nigeria, then, of course, I've said it elsewhere, at the snap of a finger, a president will get all the options on his table before nightfall. And then it becomes your mindset. What is your thinking about Nigeria, which will follow on my own part to remove my personal interest from the picture entirely? In other words, everybody who has brought anything on my table will have to explain to all of us, and I'll listen, how to get it across. We are here with ICAN. The biggest thing with ICAN is not the arithmetic of the work, it's the probity. That is what is in your motto. The probity and the integrity of the work. Not the numbers, not what the numbers tally to. And so, for me, all the time, my interests, and I will pursue it to the end, is for the good of the people, to make sure that I take actions which will render Nigeria in a better shape. I have spoken about Child Rights Act. For instance, you hear those things, they don't sound falutin, but that is where the issues are. Children are on the streets, and 11 states in the north have refused to domesticate them. Of course, I will find carrots and sticks to make them do so. And you begin to work Nigeria from that point. So
Okay.
if I may get the other side. So these are the personal aspects that Peter Umadi stands for, and which I will strive to run on in this campaign.
Okay, let me hope that this question doesn't disappear. It just did. I just saw it a moment ago. Yes, this one is from Oyeyemi Hezekiah. Says, Nigeria is one of the largest oil producing and exporting countries of the world, and only country among crude oil exporting countries importing refined oil products. This is visibly unsustainable. If elected into office, what are you going to do to bring about sustainable oil product availability in the country? And also, what are you going to do about fiscal indiscipline evidenced by our budgeting system? Let me just take this too. This will be to the candidate of the Accord Party.
Nigeria will continue to import finished crude oil products if one, we do not invest in local production. Yes, we know that the government for some time, had also added the licensing of modular refinery. All our refineries in Nigeria are not working optimally. We have the LMA Petrochemical, we have the Warri Refinery, and check they not work. So if as a nation, we want to stop importation of crude, then we must invest in ensuring that our local production is up to date. Then secondly, we talk about oil theft. As a nation, we must begin to look at our problem peculiarly and begin to solve them. Who are those involved in oil theft? They are local guys who develop local technology, and they steal crude and refine it to produce diesel. Why can't we begin to look at this local technology and begin to look at how we can also license small-scale refinery in Nigeria? As a nation, there can be a crime. You can build a system around that crime, control it, monitor it, and it will be legitimate. We must ensure that we produce and refine our crude oil so that we can produce. Today we have diesel at 800 naira. Do you know why? Because the first product from illegal refinery is blue gas. So once you fight those guys, I'm not in support of what they are doing, but you kill the economy. You know why? Because 80% of the diesel we consume in this country is produced from the creek. We must begin to look at a way of fighting corruption in a way that it doesn't kill the economy. Let us invite these guys. They have a local technology. Let's improve on it, make the technology environmentally friendly, and let's look at how to give license. In China, China is an industrialized world, not because they have massive industrial skills. They encourage small-scale industrialization, small-scale equipment. You go into a room in China, you see a family producing bottle. A family, because there is an intentional procedure to support family units. What we must do is we need to look at our technology, begin to look at how we can solve our problem, looking at the peculiarity of our problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to I saw one about providing credit system. This is, it was specifically to Dr. ICAN-ngr about what your party is going to do to provide a credible credit system to the private sector.
Okay, first is to ensure that our banking institutions are in such a way that, as consolidated as they are, that they are ready to lend to the real sector. But as I said, what we see in Nigeria today is that government is overborrowing internally in various ways. And because of that, funds are not even available for you to ensure that the private sector has access to those funds. And when they have access, because the funds are not easily available, they are lending to them at rates that are not sustainable, which is not good enough. So government must rework itself on the way in terms of fund generation, so that we do not overcrowd the banking system in this country and get access to where we are. That is one. then we must also work with private institutions with incentives to ensure that we're able to create an infrastructure development fund. And that is very key, because once we're able to get that done with tax incentives and other incentives, then they're able to create that institution and have that fund that people who are actually in very critical projects, either in energy or even in road construction and very major projects, can have access to such things. Then we must begin to work with the many people may not agree with it, but we must find ways to begin to work with even the workers. Because we have a huge pool of funds that we have in our pension funding. Because they do not trust the government, they will not want that lending to the real sector. But when you get them to work with the private sector, and they are not lending to government, but they are lending that is worked in such a way that they're able to lend with the credible organized private sector, then that private sector is able to develop the infrastructure, because the government alone cannot develop the infrastructure. And as they develop the infrastructure, then you begin to net away from the tax that they would have paid over the years. It has to be a collective approach, and this thing is very key for us to be able to achieve that. But the totality of what we need to do within the government is such that there has to be a totality of reform in our approach. But as I said, you cannot be borrowing money and you're spending trillions of naira. Like next year, they were telling us they wanted to spend 6.72 trillion for the purpose of subsidy. And we know that it is possible for us to encourage the private sector. Even the Dangote refineries is getting close to a final finish. But he has bottlenecks that he has to go through. What is government doing? When we know that that refinery is able to, the 650,000 barrels per day, whatever be the problem that Dangote is having, government should find a way of facilitating it so that we can have in-house, in-country production of oil, of the crude oil. And then thereafter, we begin to have all the savings. Because as long as we continue, all the money coming from sale of crude oil, we're applying it back and borrowing more to even get oil products, that is the refined products, into Nigeria. That is not the pathway to go. We must find ways of working with the private sector, especially when they are in critical sectors that are currently draining our economy, and ensure that we assist them and give them the enablers to enable them finish up what they have. That I visited the place. I know it's about 80-85% complete. Just the 15 to 20% left, they are stuck, and government is not paying special attention to it. It is not right.
Well, thank you for that answer. I'm going to ask, this is from Luther Agbobil. I'm going to be posing it to all the candidates. He wants to know what is your stance on open grazing. Let me ask you, you're the presidential candidate of the Labour Party.
My stand on it is very simple. We have to look at what it is today.
Just give me a moment, sorry. I did note that the vice presidential candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party has to take his leave. Bishop Isaac Idahosa, thank you so much for being a part of the conference today. Thank you for presenting. Yeah. I do not know if you want to quickly share with us. Well, he's already going. Thank you so much for your time with us here at the ICAN conference. Thank you. Okay, so we move on now. You were just about to share with us your thoughts on open grazing.
It's a look at what it is today and be able to ask yourself, are we getting the maximum production and effect on the open grazing as it is today? If not, you go into what is modern. I've discussed, well, I've discussed this issue even with all those who are involved with it and say, this is what we think we can do.
We want to take a group photograph with all of you and see.
All right, so we're having a group photograph so that all the candidates can be part of it, briefly. So we'll need the chairman, the IFAC president to also come up, Mr. Alan Johnson, and the chairman of our board of past presidents to also come up, sir. Please hold on, we see other candidates coming up.
So if we'll just settle down quickly, sorry about that interruption. The presidential candidate of the Labour Party was taking on a question, a very controversial one, which has caused quite a bit of conflict in our country today. And that's a question on open grazing.
Like I said before, it's an issue that needs a holistic attention, because today you have several states that have passed a law banning open grazing, and it's an issue that is very controversial. So it is something you need to sit down with all involved to be able to dialogue, discuss, and be able to come to a solution that is a win-win, especially one that can help in increased production in that sector. That is what I'm going to do. I'm not just going to attend it for sitting down in office, but it's something you need to sit down with all that is concerned, especially states, and discuss and agree on way forward.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to be posing one for you again quickly. This is from the past president, and the question is to you, Mr. Peter Obi. He says, could you please give an insight as to how you would rule the country with very little, if any, support from the National Assembly, where your party seems to have no representation at all?
I've said it before that I did it in a state. There's nothing, anybody who tells you that when it comes to development, he has to do according to party, is not telling you the truth. Once people are sure you're doing the right things, they will key in and support you, even those who are not in your party. This is done globally everywhere. So I do not see it as a hindrance. People can tell you, oh, it's going to be a hindrance. Who doesn't want development in his constituency? If I decide today, Niger State, for example, 8 local governments is already in hands of bandits. If I decide today to invest in agriculture, to pull Niger State out of where they are today, they will not tell me because it's not my party. So that is something that is very, very visible and doable.
Let me ask Mr. Showore, this is for you, about what you're going to do about electricity. It's still a problem. It's closely related to the topic of sustainability for economic prosperity. We cannot run an economy on generators. What are you going to do about providing electricity?
Solutions. One is to make a very important point to everyone seated here today, that Nigeria can never experience industrial revolution without electricity. Electricity, to my mind, is even more important than security at this point. Because if we get our electricity right, we will solve about 70% of our insecurity. Because with electricity gotten right 24 hours in a day, a lot of the people who are constituting bandits, criminals, and terrorists in this country will have a job to do. Having said that, I will immediately go into using energy mixes because we are on the cusp of renewable energy transition in the world. We cannot continue to rely both on dilapidated systems and dilapidated ideas in the electricity sector. That was what led the party of our candidate here to spend $16 billion generating darkness in Nigeria. We cannot continue that. We must use solar energy, wind, tidal energy to generate electricity for Nigeria. We must rebuild our transmission lines, take them away from where they used to be and give us brand new transmission lines. But most importantly, we must break down the electrical distribution system not to be a national grid. We should have regional grids. We should have grids that serve estates, serve campuses, and ensure that we can retail electricity so that you can grow electricity on your roof and sell it or pull it together to power your own area without coming to Abuja to beg somebody at the National Assembly or the presidency to give you electricity. That is an archaic idea. Because this is very, very important. I hear it all the time. How do we resolve the electricity problem without discussing fundamental solutions to generating electricity? Countries like Morocco, Tunisia, and Egypt, where Governor Peter Obi attended his, you know what I'm talking about. They are all growing electricity to the point that they are supplying Europe electricity. I promise not to talk about other candidates.
Can I ask you a quick comment on what you intend to do about open grazing?
I completely would go for ranching. The reason I would go for ranching is that it's safe, it's secure, it's also a source of generating power.
The question is how?
Biogas.
How?
No.
Because we've seen, just a moment, we've seen the attempt of the federal government to try and get states to yield land to herders.
There's a difference between grazing and try to grab land. The federal government is interested in Ruga. They want to grab land. I'm not interested in that. What you're saying is that churches, look, the people that consume the most amount of beef in the country are in the southwest. Yoruba people, they eat any part of, there's no part of cow that they don't eat. Nose, yash, everything. Why can't they do what Awolowo did in 1956 when he had a grazing place in current Ondo State, Akuna, where they were able to supply beef to the southwest? You don't need anybody to come from Niger to give you beef. But all of them are always playing, lip service to the governor of Ekiti State. Flew cows to Ekiti by first class. One of them escaped at the airport. They didn't know how to catch it. You understand? That is not governance. And if we are still using the old federal government system, then we might as well just keep voting for this guy to continue in office. You are asking me for new ideas. Let me talk about it. Ranching is the solution. Hydroponic ranches, not Ruga or land grabbing. Because part of where Nigeria got to where it is today is the Land Use Act that Obasanjo introduced when he was in power. We haven't solved that, and you want to grab more land instead of allowing modern ideas to give you beef. That's what I'm saying.
So let me quickly pose this to Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa, and I imagine that your response might be a bit different because you're currently sitting as governor of Delta State. You have experienced firsthand the clashes that have resulted from the conflict as a result of open grazing. Is your party thinking of approaching this any differently?
In the first instance, the federal government of a truth has no land of its own. Lands by our constitution belong to the state government or to the people of the state and is held in trust by the government of the state. So first, for us to find a solution, there must be a collaboration and a realization that all component parts matter. Both the federal government, the state government, and the local governments will need to sit together to attend to the solution. I agree with him that ranching is the pathway, but ranching is also expensive and it's not something that you can easily get to immediately. And the fact is that for ranching, it takes a lot of capital to be able to do that. So what do we have to do? We have to work with the state governors, find a way to encourage the private sector and the state governments to have access to funding at cheap rates, agricultural rates, not rates beyond 10%, so that with such funding, they are able to actually have what he referred to as grazing places, as Awolowo did, but with an improvement. Because now when you have such grazing places, and they are secured, and you have provided facilities, actually you have developed ranches. And then, as we get to that level, you also need to talk with the people, because if you provide this and the people are not utilizing the ranches or the grazing places, then in that case, you have done nothing. So it means that there has to be a sit down with the Métis Allah and all those people who are involved in cattle rearing to let them know that it is more profitable. And when a few of them, you start pilot schemes and they begin to see the profitability of having their cattle in that place rather than trekking it and suffering the people, you will find that with those ones, you begin to recreate hope and more people will have to get into the ranches. But you must work with the state governments who are the owners of the land. You must bring the private sector in, because when you allow the government to run it, most times it's difficult for government to run such facilities on their own and to be able to run it sustainably. So we must find that mix, and it is going to require bringing everybody to the table for us to talk as it provides cheap agricultural funds for the purpose of establishing those ranches. And as of today, the greatest problem, because most states have made laws, but they are not able to do anything because they don't have their own police force. So whatever law you're making comes to naught, because you are not going to be able to use the federal police to do what you want to do. But we have committed that we are going to allow states have their police force. And when people begin to realize that there's something that the economy will grow with ranching or taking their cattle to reserve areas that are well structured, but you have to pay some money for that purpose, so it becomes an economic thing which definitely works for all, and it is very important. And the state police will be able to ensure that you do not just roam around all farmlands and begin to destroy the crops of others, because it's what is creating a high level of insecurity across the various states in Nigeria, and we need to put a stop to that.
Thank you very much. I'm going to pose this also to the candidate of the Accord Party. Professor, have you given thought to open grazing, what you're going to do about it? And in the same breath, you might want to comment on electricity generation.
Okay, quickly, let me first talk about the electricity generation. I often would say this, that government does not know how to do business. Government should not be in business. Rather, only but to create enabling environment for business to strive. If we check carefully, we discover that every sector that government have huge involvement has problem. The power sector, the tertiary education sector, check them. Because government's role should basically be creating an enabling environment for investors to strive. So one of the very first things we'll be doing in electricity is to look at the policy framework. Today, Nigeria needs 100,000 megawatts of power. We are only able to produce 4,000 megawatts of power. We have companies in India, just companies that belongs to an individual, producing over 40,000 megawatts of power, a whole country. So we must begin to look at the policy. NERC, the Regulatory Council, let us have more investors come in and begin to handle power generation, power transmission, and power distribution. We must not make a sector that is hinged upon national development monopoly. We don't monopolize the sector. So the monopoly currently in the power sector is what is making Nigeria not have power since 1960. If we must grow as a nation, the power sector must be liberalized. And we need to start having those that know how to do business run the power industry. That is the way out. And for open grazing, why are we talking about open grazing? Because of the huge security challenge we have with those who practice those businesses. First, we need to solve the security challenge in it. We need to identify, we need to database. See, one of the biggest problems we have as a nation is data. We are in a country that have no data. We are in a country that operate no system. See, if we must prosper as a nation, we must have data. We don't even know Nigerians that are giving birth to. Okay, we talked about the NIM and the BVN. Even if we are trying to build a data for Nigerians, to know who Nigerians are, what about the children that are giving birth to? We must begin to run a management system for all our hospitals so that a child that is giving birth to in Nigeria is recognized. That is the only way we can build a country. Today, this is ICAN. You know all your members. Your members have number. You know where they are. You can track them. As a country, we must begin to build a system. The solution to our problem is to build a system, and that can only happen by digitalizing the economy. I'm a digital professor. And I understand this. We talk about digital technology. I want to a little disagree with my friend, Mr. Peter Obi, who said one of the ways to make Nigeria a productive economy is to invest in the vast land in Yobe. No. In as much as we must invest in agriculture, subsidize food, but one of the best ways to convert Nigeria to a productive economy, one, is by investing hugely in Nigerians. Is two, is by making Nigeria a nation that has what? Friendly business economy. Are you aware that Nigerian visa is still one of the toughest visas to get in the US and China? A country that needs investor. Are you aware of the kind of policies we have that encourages double taxation and frustrate investors for coming into this country? Many investors that are in Ghana and other West African shores have Nigeria as their target market. But the only reason why they will not come into Nigeria is because of our poor business environment. Okay. So we must begin to rejig it. So what I'm saying in a nutshell is this. We must invest in human, we must invest in technology, we must create enabling environment for business to strive. In so doing, human beings naturally will move in the direction that profit them the most. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Professor Peter Umeade, I'm just going to ask for your comments, your quick comments as we wrap up now. After that, after you've spoken on open grazing, is this something you'd like to talk about? Let me just quickly ask you. Open grazing and electricity. And after that, I'm going to, go around all of the presidential candidates to give their closing comments. And that's where we'll have to wrap up this session.
Yes, open grazing, ladies and gentlemen, we have to find a new beginning, which must start by calling a spade a spade. That is what has kept us where we are. Take open grazing. The defense of the federal government sometimes is that they have grazing routes, which they want to hold on to, which were made in the past. But does it include trespass? Like we've said here, does it include damage to farms, to crops? Of course not. So, you see, if you're in a country and you want to rebuild, you must start from somewhere and you must put your feet down and do the right thing from the beginning. So my own suggestion is that the farms, because when you talk about thoughts, that is harm to persons or property, you talk about who came there first. The farms that are there should be protected before we begin to look into what we're doing to cattle that are getting into farms and destroying them. In Owerri on Saturday, I was there. The songs that greeted me from the women that I went to see were that Nama has destroyed all our crops. And not just destroying all their crops, women are abused, people are killed in those farms. And then we'll talk about security. And then we come here and we want to gloss over these issues. Then we don't want a new country. ABGA will not be for that. If somebody like me coming from where I'm coming from, no. I will first of all secure, bearing in mind the issue of the grazing routes, the right of every Nigerian to traverse the country from the beginning to end, but also bearing in mind that issue of trespass, especially to food sustenance and security. So I will first of all secure the farms, then we'll begin to sort out, no matter how long it takes, who to give what right, to do what, about his own source of livelihood. Don't forget, because the cattle is someone else's source of livelihood, as against the farm, which sometimes is for the basic sustenance. Now, on a general note, I want to make this point here because this is a very good area of calculative minds who are looking into why all of us are here. The 27th President of the United States of America, his name was William Howard Taft. William Howard Taft later became the 10th Chief Justice of America. It was Howard Taft who built the Supreme Court as we know it today. It was Howard Taft who got money from the legislature, from the executive of which he was one, and started building the Supreme Court and supervised it until he was no more and his predecessor took it. And that is the grandiose edifice that you see today that is called the United States Supreme Court building. So, lesson to go from that, I have administered the judiciary for 8 years. I'm the best man to reposition Nigeria, and I give you 4 years to do that.
Okay. Thank you so much for your response on that. There's a quick one here, and I would say that any of the presidential candidates can respond to it as we close. It's also from another past president, and it is specifically about the body of chartered accountants. It says, accounting professionals use technology in our role as trusted advisors, performing sought-after services to businesses, government, SMEs, non-profits, and individuals. What will you do to help build a highly skilled and competent pipeline of professional accountants in Nigeria? This is as we wrap up. You'll answer this question, each one of you, maybe in 30 seconds, and also give us your closing comments. Thank you.
Okay, let me start. I am a digital professor, and I know that in the accounting profession, you have your professional exam, which of course is taken online. We've grown into a digital economy. State like Zamfara has shut down education for 3 years. With a digital education, schools can be shut down because of insecurity, yet education continues. I have been in the field of human capital development, and I also understand this. We must begin to engage professionals. ASU is on strike. We have students studying accounting in the university. once ASU resume, they will be asked to wrap up their semesters or their section within 2 weeks. What we have done is to destroy the mindset of the Nigerian people. When you educate your people, you improve their mind. Education is about mind reformation. We must begin to build accountants. We must begin to build every persons in every profession to be able to develop Nigeria as a nation. Foreigners are not going to develop us. We as Nigerians, we have the duty to develop our country. So huge investment in the profession is key. Digitalization and ensuring that we get the right hand to do the right job. With a system, you don't need to know anybody to become somebody. We're going to build an economy where a man that knows nobody can become somebody without knowing anybody. That is digitalization. That is strengthening the institution of Nigeria. Currently, I have said this and I'm doing it. We have opened up our digital university for Nigerian students that are at home suffering from ASU strike to study. As we speak now, we have hundreds of thousands of students studying for free. I did that. I don't need to be in government before I can impact. We have hundreds of thousands of students studying online in all over Nigeria. I'm committed to this cause. I'm not in this race to be famous. I'm in this race because I know I have what it takes to solve the lingering problem of Nigeria, from power to security to education and every facet. Thank you so much for inviting me. God bless you.
First, as I thank ICAN for inviting me, I want to truly thank you for gathering together. As you gather together to talk to yourselves, you're actually causing yourself to sit down, to examine issues, and to see the way forward. Yes, technology is very important. In my state, I believe that those who are conversant with the to say we've gone very far in ensuring, and I'm ensuring that technology plays a major role in our accounting system. And the World Bank has been very, very useful to many states in going in this direction. But beyond this, it's important that we must take advantage, as it did say, of online learning. And I think that ICAN has to lead that and ensure that people don't have to come all the way to Abuja to gather, because that is a great expense to the people. So we must work using technology to ensure that we have very regular courses for our various accountants, both in the public and the private sector, and I think that is key. And that is something that government will support in the various states. We're realizing that more of the accountants are within states and the organized private sector than even at the federal space. So that is quite important. Then going forward into where we are, we need to recreate hope for Nigerians. And recreating that hope, we need to be sure that we are one people, and we commit to being one people. I want to disagree with my friend. Nigeria has to be united for us to move forward, because if a component part of the state of the nation is doing well and another zone is not doing well, we will continue to experience these issues of insecurity going forward. We need to ensure that we create jobs and wealth for our people, and that is going to be through a private sector-led economy that's enabled by the government of the federation and government of the states. And we must work together to ensure this. In our educational sector, it's very key that we must emphasize science and entrepreneurial education going forward. We cannot continue in the pathway that we are taking at the moment. And that is inclusive of ICT development in our various schools. And I think that this is very key to us. And we must ensure that we continue to manage the health of our people and manage our populations in such a manner that it is constructive and productive, not what we find at the moment. Because the more the women are producing 8, 7 children, and usually within the poor class, that situation is going to create insecurity continually, and that ought not to be. So we must find ways of managing this in going forward. But coming to the energy sector, it's important that we do not only rely on the major electricity issues. Captive power is there. In my state, we are running so many of our government facilities in captive power. That is what is going on at the moment. And the more we're able to generate captive power in various places, in such small circles, we'll find that we'll be able to reduce the energy needs in generality, and it's important. ASU is on strike. I run 4 universities in my state, but the 4 universities are currently in section. That is because we pay special attention to education. We have 4 universities run by the state, and the 4 universities are in section. It is doable. It depends on your commitment. It depends on what you are set out to do. When a people are uneducated, they are a lost people, and we must take special attention of that. And I believe that it's important that we rework this country in the best interest. Everybody has to be included in the growth of this nation. Otherwise, we'll be growing insecurity rather than growing the economy. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much. I want to say that one of the most difficult things to get over is when an accountant asks you to find a receipt for every transaction you hold. And then I start asking myself, why is it easy to steal in Nigeria if there's an accountant doing his or her own job in every sector of the country, demanding for receipts for every transaction? But the truth is that our biggest problem in this country is the opaque way we transact business, particularly in the public and private sector. And I want to call on our accountants, seriously, to help us get rid of paperwork. Paperwork is one of the easiest ways to steal. And get involved with digitalization and technology. Don't let me lie to you. The computer is about to steal your jobs if you don't get up to speed with technology. There will be less and less accountants at these conferences if you don't get used to the way the world is changing. And as I've asked of you, those of you who are in the room and those who are watching and listening to us, when I come to government, I'm going to need a lot of accountants. Every nook and cranny of the facet of life of Nigeria and Nigerians, so that we can sustain this country further. Finally, and in closing, I don't want to say too much. I know people demand experience all the time, but I urge you to look at the meaning of experience in the dictionary. It says people who have had direct contact with things that are happening and those who have observed them. I'm sitting down here with 32 years of experience, having participated in fighting for democracy, observing all the good and bad leaders. I've never met any good leaders, not many of them. And also ensuring that this country works up to the point that it is today. Ask yourself on the other side, the people with experience, what they have done to your country. The country is broken, is disunited, and is disheveled. I just urge you to choose between darkness and light. Vote right in 2023. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I heartily thank the ICAN for inviting me here. I've enjoyed the long day, and I wish you well. Thank you very much.
Well, let me thank ICAN for the invitation. I continue to urge that they continue to discuss for the interests of Nigeria. A few quick comments. If I go to what the Accord candidate mentioned when he said about what they said about consumption to production. When I mean that, I talk about the entire value chain. I did say we need to create an enabling environment, a regulating environment that will allow businesses to thrive, especially micro, small businesses. Not having time to expatiate, I would have expatiated on what I did. And in terms of education, I mentioned it, I was very clear when I talked about HDI. I said, go to Anambra and see what we did in education. I don't think anybody can talk about education in this country without talking what happened in Anambra State, where even a presidential candidate has said schools were closed for 2 years and he did not allow a governor to come back. But the same state became number one, 2011, 2013 to 2013. So it's a difference. So that is the wrap up of that. On issues that we are discussing, We need to move the country. I say it again, this country needs to move from consumption to production. It's not producing enough, it's not exporting enough. There's a lot you can do today to create jobs. We can't have a country of this size with this 30-something% unemployment and don't have problem. Every country of our size, from Vietnam to Indonesia to have less than 10% unemployment. That's why they have less problem. And they have issues that we have here, agitations and all banditry. But the more they pull people out of poverty, the better they are doing. And like I said, doing simple things and doing it consistently. Next year's election should not be based on ethnicity or tribe. There's no tribe in Nigeria that buys bread cheaper or have uninterrupted electricity or have better roads and everything. It should not be based on religion. The Muslims don't buy bread cheaper, neither do Christians. All these things are ethnic. All these things we see, ethnic, religion, or my tongue, are all elite conspiracy to keep us down. When people talk about it, let's look at the past. What were people able to do in the past? Where are they coming from? Let them show us where they manage. If you say you're not going to be corrupt, let's see how you manage the last money that was given to you and everything. Next year's election must be based on capacity, on character we can trust, competency, capability, and determination to do the right thing. Nigeria have all the potential to be a great country, and I say it, give the opportunity to somebody who is competent, he'll turn around Nigeria. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much. On this note, we have come to the end of this session. I have to thank very much the candidates that have graced this occasion. The presidential candidate of the Accord Party, Professor Christopher Irene Inumolen, the presidential candidate of the African Action Congress, Mr. Omoyele Sowore, the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, Professor Peter Umeadi, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, the vice presidential candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party, Bishop Isaac Idahosa, who had to leave us, and also the vice presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa, who is currently the governor of Delta State. You have heard them, and I'm sure that come 2023, February 2023, they would know whether you have been able to convince them to vote for your party, for their party. But at the end of the day, don't forget, the choice is yours. The choice is in your hands. So vote wisely, as they say. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you so much for having this session.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Can we rise up and give them a standing ovation? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now we're going to have a presentation of gifts. Thank you very much. You can be seated. We have presentation of gifts, and we invite our 58th president, Malam Tijani Musa Issa. Please hold on. We have gifts for you. Thank you. Let's appreciate our president, please. Bring all of it up. All of it at the same time, please. All of it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you just give to the president, he delivers to them.
Okay, you can go there and call them. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we wish to sincerely thank the presidential candidates and their representatives for honoring our invitation. And as Maupe has said, please vote wisely, vote according to your conscience, vote for the party of your choice. We pray that we have a fair and free election devoid of violence. We pray that we have a peaceful election. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We are waiting. Okay.
So let's quickly get to the presentation of gifts. I'm going to go in the same way that we started. Let's invite the presidential candidate of the Accord Party, Professor Christopher Irene Inumole.
For transparency and accountability, we'll get the bags open, but be informed these are the conference bags given to every delegate who has registered or has come as a okay. These are the conference materials we are making available to all. So, Mr. Showore, this is accountability. So, as I hand over the mic, I will say that it's my pleasure, privilege, and honor to present these conference bags to all those who agreed to honor our invitation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Following very closely is the presidential candidate of the African Action Congress, Mr. Omoyele Sowore. Following very closely is the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, Professor Peter Umeadi. And right up next is the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Gregory Obi. Thank you so much. We also have the vice presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa.
So we're going to be having group photograph with all the candidates. With your bags. No, you need to be there. We have a bag for you too. It doesn't matter, you're the moderator, so we need you there. So I think you can stay there. Thank you. Sir? Yes. Okay, so you can stay there. The president needs to be in the center. Okay. So we'll okay. So the IFAC president, Mr. Alan Johnson, we also need you up here. Mr. Alan Johnson. Then members of the body of past presidents, we also need all of them present to come up. Members of the body of past presidents, we'll need you up. Okay.
That is for her.
Yes. Okay. Member of body of past presidents, we'll need you up, sir. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. All right. At this point, we need members of the presidency. the first deputy vice president, the second deputy vice president, the immediate past presidents to come up.
Bumi.
Council members should be on standby, please. All right, thank you very much. While the candidates still remain, council members should come up after the members of the Board of Past Presidents are done. The past presidents will leave. All right, thank you, thank you, thank you. So council members, we need to come up. So Board of Past Presidents, thank you very much for your time, sir.
We intended to go before.
So council members, please come. All right. Council members. All right. Okay, do we have all the council members? All right. Mr. Dele, I doubt if they're going to see you there. All right. Kunle. Thank you very much. So, Mr. President, we have the final gift for the moderator. So you can do the presentation. So, our moderator, please, you can come closer and have a comprehensive photograph with the president and members of the presidency. Thank you.
Members of presidency.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, we are good. Sir. Thank you very much, sir. Sorry?
No, this one. Wait for his turn.
All right, as the presidential candidate leaves, please let's remain in the hall so that we can give them the time to work and the freedom to walk out. And I think I received this information from the Ashwaju team that they are presently in Transcorp and they are unable to join this event, but they promise that they are going to be with us before the end of the conference. They promise they will be with us before the end of the conference. So they will get back to us and we will let you know. All right? Thank you very much. We need to be fair to every candidate. Fairness is extremely key. Okay? Thank you. Thank you. So the Ashwaju team promised to be with us before the end of the conference. So they will get in touch with us and the committee will get back to you. Thank you. Ashwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu's team will get in touch with us before the end of the conference. All right, thank you. Please, our security team, please, you can usher the candidates out to their respective cars. Our security team, please guide the candidates to their respective vehicles. Thank you. The next thing on the program is lunch. So you have your lunch in your respective hotels. And at the end of today at 7 p.m., we're going to have the novelty match here in Sheraton at 7 p.m. 7 p.m., please. Thank you. All of that information will be communicated as we receive them. Thank you. You have information.
mind. Nigeria on my mind. Porn in time.
So I was just been informed that the novelty march is starting now. So if you
Through these 100 years, our struggles and through all our fears, we're strong in our unity. Peace, our destiny. Here we are. Standing tall. We're standing tall. Standing tall. We are one. We are 100 years of unity. Nigeria. We will stand. We will stand. Oh, this land of mine. This land of mine. Nigeria. On my mind. On my mind. I pledge to you my loyalty, my love, my ability. And as we celebrate ourselves, we shall dedicate this song to a new Nigeria, for a better land for all. Here we are, standing tall through adversities. We are one. 100 years. Unity. Nigeria. We will stand on the mountain, shout it in the valley. Nigeria has come a long, long way on a journey to our future of brighter